6 Music.
You are now entering parallel universe. And wipe your feet on the way in.
Marc Riley, BBC 6 Music.
Petrol Emotion and Big Decision, that Rob Hughes. And welcome to the programme, mate.
Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you kindly. You?
Yeah, I'm fine, yeah. So we're looking at sounds here, 27th of June, 1987. That tune is terrific, isn't it? Big Decision. With Damien O'Neill, of course, on guitar from Undertones.
Great songwriter.
Just wonderful. So the news this week, Echo and the Bunnymen's long-awaited follow-up to Ocean Rain will be out on the 6th of July, simply titled Echo and the Bunnymen. It's their first collection of original songs in over 3 years. There's also a special keyboard contribution on the track Bedbugs and Ballyhoo from Ray Manzarek. Do you remember this? Who originally teamed up with the Bunnymen at the Amazon Studios in Liverpool to record People Are Strange as part of the soundtrack to the forthcoming Lost Boys film, and was roped in for extra duties.
Right.
And Five Star, whose last UK tour was sponsored by Cadbury, are now backed by toothpaste giants Ultra Bright for an upcoming date to begin in October.
Excellent.
Squeaky clean. Unlike the Jam, so Roy Wilkinson, who's all over this, by the way, this week, Roy Wilkinson.
Hello, Roy.
Meets the Justified Ancients of Moo Moo. He says, if it moves, grab it. If it says anything, sample it. Today's pop regeneration is in an enviable position. They have recording history in its entirety at their beck and call. The Justified Ancients of Moo Moo's What the F Is Going On is an album that kickstarts sampling exploitation in this country. The sprawling collage rips off everybody from Led Zepp to Sam Fox to Julie Andrews, throwing down a gauntlet to everybody in sight.
Excellent. And for those who don't know, so Roy these days manages Pale Blue Eyes, who did a session for us a couple of weeks ago, who were great.
Yeah, I've been playing that album all week, actually, in the car.
Yeah,
it's terrific. Tracking Jam's main men, King Boy D. So this is Bill Drummond and Rockman Rock, Jimmy Corty, to a North London studio. We tried to find out why they've cut up and stolen just what they have. There's a guitar break from Whole Lot of Love by Led Zepp, the Sunset Sunrise bit from Fiddler on the Roof, an excerpt from Sam Fox's Touch Me, ABBA's Dancing Queen, and also The Fall's Totally Wired.
I didn't know that. And so, did they do it the right way and get clearance for all of these things? Because that was always the talking point, wasn't it? Because like the Beastie Boys, famously, they just run off in the dawn of sampling. They would just run off and take things and think that was fine. But of course, the copyright and
all that stuff and De La Soul and stuff. It doesn't say, to be clear. So maybe that's part of the sort of moot point here. What's being discussed,
Right. You would think, being those two, you would think that they didn't.
No, probably not. They probably just took what they wanted. King Boy, Bill Drummond, says, I lost my copy of Totally Wired. Actually, going back to what you just said, he said, this is the only record that we got official permission to use. So there's your answer,
right.
I'd read on.
Right.
I've lost my copy, so I phoned up Rough Trade boss Jeff Travis for a copy and got the okay from him. I've always liked the phrase Totally Wired. I like the phrase most. I think it's a great record, which is true, of course. And they've also used Kick Out the Jams for MC5, which is where the name comes from.
Right.
As well as the national anthem.
Is that right? Oh, I didn't know that.
Roy Wilkinson also goes to Glastonbury, which is interesting because it's 1987, then called the Glastonbury CND Festival at Pilton Worthy Farm. He gets there just in time to see Julian Cope on the Friday night and then New Order. Saturday night, Richard Thompson, That Petrol Emotion and the Weather Prophets. He said Pete Astor, clad period non-specific denim suit with his aviator shades and his ghostly complexion, has an air of cloistered lethargy about him. The rain falls in 9 out of 10 Weather Prophet songs, but didn't fall once during their set.
Right.
On Sunday night, it's Pop Will Eat Itself, Gay Bikers on Acid and Stump. So it just gives you, obviously there's no superstars here or great crowds. It's still very much a micro festival, isn't it, at this point?
Yeah, I wonder what the size of the audience would have been. Would it have been about 30,000 or something like that?
Would it be as much as that, do you think? Yeah, possibly.
Just speculating.
Yeah, I'm just saying. New singles, Petrol Emotion, we heard that one, The Cure, Ozzy Osbourne, Trouble Funk, and Fetus, Jim Thirlwell. It doesn't say who's reviewing these. With Bedrock, it says, in any of his myriad guises, as somebody as I have trouble handling whatever the shape or form he does, what happens here, it's a noise that starts from somewhere deep and most unpleasant, but maybe that's the point. It starts out like a Tom Waits thing and grinds into a slow tease of lust, backed by what sounds like the whole Billy May orchestra.
And we're still talking about Jim Thirlwell?
We are, yeah, Bedrock.
I mean, I've got to take, it's Roy again, you say?
No, don't know who that is. That was an unnamed reviewer on singles, yeah.
All right, well, which track is it? Does it say?
Bedrock.
Oh, right, okay. I mean, I played by him. I played Descent to the Inferno. I don't know if you know that.
Don't know it.
From the Nail album.
Okay.
And it is just one of the greatest tracks ever. And, he did Wash It All Off, was it called, and Finely Honed Machine.
Yeah.
He's a genius. So whoever wrote it should remain anonymous for their own safety.
Absolutely. And then in tiny print, the Creepers' Brute, Newey from Manchester's answer to the Beasties, it says here.
Right.
That was produced by John Langford, was it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. As a lot of them were actually by the Creepers, not the Beastie Boys. But...
Yeah. And on the cover, Peter Gabriel in full flow there.
Right, let's have it. Can't help but wonder where Genesis would have gone if Peter Gabriel hadn't have left them in 1976, was it, when he went?
Why, do you think they might have gone a slightly more soulful, funky direction?
Well, yeah, you would imagine so, wouldn't you? I mean, I was listening to his first album just the other day, actually, and you could see kind of some of the stuff like humdrum on that, you could imagine Genesis doing.
Yeah.
And then you would imagine that he would have got a little bit bored with doing the same thing over and over and moved on, because he's a bit like that, isn't he?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it would have been interesting to see Genesis
Definitely.
handling that.
Well, you always got the feeling, didn't you, even within Genesis, that there was a sort of pop tunesmith dying to break out there, but probably didn't quite feel he'd get the support.
It was all over the place, really, wasn't it? Because, I mean, obviously they had the prog handle, but early on they were very folky. I mean, really, really early on, they were another beast altogether when they first got together for Genesis to Revelation or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just an interesting thought.
Absolutely, yeah. And of course, his first love, I think, was Otis Redding, soul music, wasn't it? It was R&B.
He's got such a soulful voice,
Yeah.
there's no doubt about that.
Great voice. So we're looking at sounds here from the 27th of July 1987. Matt Snow investigates Mike Watt, the brains behind Firehose, who's currently Latter-day Stooge as well, of course. With a past that goes back to the Minutemen. Listening to Mike Watt talk is a mental roller coaster ride. Hearing him play is no less exciting a trip. For years, he pumped bass alongside D. Boone and George Hurley and the Minutemen, the punk, funk, hardcore, jazz, unclassifiable trio from San Pedro in California. So it was all going well, wasn't it? I mean, people still don't... I mean, the Minutemen are still very much a cult concern, aren't they? They're not quite across everybody's radar yet.
No, I mean, there were jazz elements in there and all kinds of things, weren't there? And a lot of the songs came in at under a minute and a half, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right.
It's a strange band, but absolutely brilliant. But I have to say, if you were to drop Mike Watt and Kid Congo into a band, then you would be guaranteed of having the two nicest musicians in the world ever.
He is brilliant.
I mean, if Tom Robinson was joining as well, I would just explode, I mean, but Mike Watt's so sweet. Came and did the session with us, with Sam Duke for Cuz, which was great. And the weird thing was, Mike... with everything that he'd done, even at that point in time, the Stooges included, he was nervous as hell.
Was he?
His hands were shaking like mad. And I said to him, "You okay?" He said, "Yeah, I'm just really nervous." Why?
That's a surprise, gosh.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's such a humble, beautiful guy. I can't tell you, he's just one of the nicest people I've ever met in my
He is
life.
wonderful. I remember he sent me a DVD of the Minutemen a long time ago, maybe 20 years ago.
Right.
I think when he was in doing that session for you, they had those great sort of homemade Cuz album covers, didn't they? It was like a gold card that folded over and then glitter writing. I got one of those somewhere as well.
Yeah.
So at this point, of course, his life changed totally when D. Boone died in a car crash in 85. And he said he was such an influential figure. He just said what was on his mind. He said the Minutemen were high energy and we played at full throttle, but I'm just too old now to do that kind of thing anymore because it hurts after a while. And he's 28 at this point.
Right.
So he starts a new band, and they were looking for, it was George Hurley as well, they were looking for a singer. They finally got one, a guy called Ed Crawford, who besieged Mike's answer phone with a request to be given a hearing. Watt says, in the end, I invited him over just to get rid of him because I wanted him to leave me alone.
Right.
Just nice to be nice.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's only like less than a page here, but it's sort of such a sort of colourful portrait of a band here. Roy Wilkinson goes to meet Pulp. So this is 87, and they're really not across anybody's radar, to use the phrase twice. He goes to meet them on the release of the new LP Freaks. He says he's a little bit wary in light of singer Jarvis Cocker's claim that his namesake Joe once installed a gas fire at his house. So it's difficult to know whether to believe him.
Right, okay. It's true, apparently. Michelle's nodding.
Is that right? Seriously? Pulp are a Sheffield band, he says. Freaks is their second album. Pulp's core of Cocker and violinist guitarist Russell Sr. are creating a haunting music which is virtually without peer in the Britain of 1987.
Well said.
Direct, stripping emotions down kind of songs, a naked unsightliness. and then coating them with a pervading sense of gloom. He says, Jarvis says, I've never been a very carefree adolescent. I wouldn't go out with me if I were you. One of the reasons we called it Freaks was because we always get called Freaks, the escape party from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, stuff like that. When we play live, everybody dwells on the fact that I'm thin with specs. Russell looks like Count Dracula. Candida on keyboards, although she's 23, looks 14. And Pete on bass looks like a football hooligan.
Right.
We're always getting called Freaks, so we thought, let's call the LP that. As far as Jarvis is concerned, though, says Roy, he's not an eccentric. His speech is prosaically direct, miles away from the contrivance that Pulp's press might lead you to expect of this 23-year-old with his long limbs and disgusting brown crimpling slacks which terminate 6 inches short of his ankles.
Well, it wasn't that long ago, I think I read that Jarvis did say that he was influenced by Mark Smith. Not his delivery or anything, but kind of like, maybe it would be a little bit like, what would Mark Smith do?
Right, okay. Sorry, okay. And albums out, various things, including Felt's Poem of the River, but also Bring the Family by John Hyatt.
Let's do it. Some people love country music, and some people really hate it, but, I think it's all right. Kind of
Very
thing.
good, mate.
Yeah.
Brilliant. You can't dislike that, though, can you?
No, I love it, actually. So that was on the Tape with No Name, which was the one of the many compilations. The NME used to do different compilations,
Yes.
didn't they? And I had the LP version of it, the vinyl version of it, actually. But yeah, I particularly loved that tune off it. Memphis, in the meantime, John Hyatt. You say Ry Cooder on guitar.
He is, yeah. I was going to go into that. It's a review here. So, looking at sounds, 27th of June, 1987. Bring the Family is the album. John Hyatt is one of the more enduring and overlooked talents of the post-punk age, it says here. The quality of this collection is such, it could easily pass for the new album that Ry Cooder never got round to making. In fact, Cooder's on it, adding his typically mercurial guitar work. Meanwhile, this Batman and Robin combination is backed up by the modest rhythm section of Nick Lowe and Jim Keltner. So there's a band for you.
Yeah.
Bands.
Sorry, Bob. What was the name of that? Was it called Little Village or something? The band that Ry Cooder was in.
Yeah,
and
it was, wasn't
Nick
it?
Lowe and all that. Yeah.
Gigs this week, you've got Cardiacs at the Escape Club in Brighton, Guns N' Roses at the Marquee, Gil Scott Heron at the Town and Country in Kentish Town, Psychic TV at Nottingham Mardi Gras Spontaneous Underground, Robin Hitchcock and the Egyptians at Newcastle Riverside, Sonic Youth at the Mean Fiddler in Harleston, Curtis Mayfield at the Town and Country, Eddie and the Hot Rods at Watford College, Stone Roses at Manchester International, early days.
I was at that.
Were you? 87, wow. The Lars, were they quite gothy then? Was it still that phase, or they moved a little?
Were they quite what?
Were they quite gothy when they started off gothy?
No, they weren't, no. And in fact, I reviewed them at that show, and I think that's a show where I said in a year's or so's time they'll be playing in fields the length and breadth of the country, and it was the only time I've ever been right in my life.
Well done, mate. Well, you've got to happen sometime, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The Lars at Liverpool Everyman Bistro, Peter Gabriel and your son The Door at Birmingham NEC, Trouble Funk at Lee's Cliff Hall in Folkestone. I like this review. This is Andy Hurt goes to see Guns N' Roses at the Marquee. 87, were they were they still on the rise then, were they?
I'm not really charted. I haven't got a part of my brain which knows what Guns N' Roses
Why
are
not?
up to. I know,
Right.
I know.
Anyway, he says he's not keen on them. He says, my main problem is with the singer. Yes, he does bob and weave like any self-respecting frontman should, and he has the Farrah Fawcett hair and the tattoos, but that voice drives me up the bleeding wall. 18 hours earlier, I'd watched Spinal Tap on TV, and evidently so the drummer. For at the end of each song, he'd leap up from his stool and point a drumstick at the audience. Rock and roll. Sadly, though, they played no selections from Sniff the Glove. Damning.
Well, I mean, it's funny because James Dean Bradfield does say that he said it a long time ago that he thought that Axl Rose had the greatest voice in rock and roll. And
really?
I couldn't disagree more personally.
No.
But each to their own, obviously.
Same here. Yeah, okay. And you know what? Electric is out by The Cult, which is where they went huge and stadium-sized.
It is, and funnily enough, who was their opening act on that tour in America? But Guns N' Roses, as I understand it.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, all right. Thanks to everybody for listening. This is A Cult and Wildflower. And we'll see you when we see you. Bye.
To exit the parallel universe.
Mark Riley, BBC Six Music.
And shut the door on your way out.